I'm going to take you through the basics of how you can start to write your own macros in Analysis version 3. This will allow you to create your own shortcuts for repetitive tasks or create bespoke ways of analysing and manipulating your data. Our macro writing tutorial begins with a short introduction to some of the basic elements of object-oriented programming. In brief, each data type, so spectra, peaks, atoms, residues, all form a so-called class within the program. Actual items of data within these classes, so each of these individual spectra shown here for instance, are then referred to as objects. Now each class has a variety of so-called properties and methods associated with it. Properties you can think of as a bit like variables. So a spectrum might have properties for its name, for the experiment type, the spectral width, all the bits of information that are linked to a spectrum. For a peak, it would perhaps be the position, the height, the volume. And note that, of course, while some bits of information, like the peak position, would probably always be known, the volume might at any one particular point in time not be known. But the program always has space for that peak property, volume. Methods you can think of as a bit like functions or subroutines. They enable you to do something with a particular item of data. So spectrum.rename would allow you to change the name of a spectrum. Peak.assign dimension would allow you to assign a particular dimension of one of your peaks. Now finally, I'm going to introduce you to project IDs, or PIDs or PIDs for short. Each object has a unique project ID, and these are what's given here in the sidebar. So this top spectrum here has project ID SP:HSQC. Different types of data have different two-letter codes at the start, always to signify what type of data or what class they belong to. If things are nested, so for instance a peak list is always nested below a spectrum, then you will see that the project ID of the peak list includes the spectrum name as well, so you can always trace where it belongs to. Right, let's get stuck into some macro writing. From the View menu you can open the Python console, or alternatively you can just type space. This will bring up the Python console, which is divided into two parts. The upper part will echo commands that you do on the graphical user interface. The lower part will enable you to start typing your own commands. Now the easiest way to start writing a macro is to do something on the graphical user interface, on the GUI, and then have a look and see what command is echoed up here. So for instance here I might want to rename this spectrum to something a bit more helpful. I can do this very easily in this pop-up. And you can see here I get the command for what that is. I can now copy it and paste it below. And I could then, here on the command line, if I wanted to change that perhaps to an underscore. Pressing return, and you can see it's changed this. Now if you want to start stringing several things together, then you can do that using our macro editor. Go to macro new, and our macro editor comes up. So I could now here again copy and paste, and perhaps I will start renaming my Sec5 spectra, because at the moment the information about the protein isn't included. So I've got my command here, and now I simply press the play button, and you can see this little run command down below, and here you can see that my spectrum has been renamed. So obviously I could now take this, copy and several copies, I could then change these to rename a whole load of spectra in one go. Now when I press play, you will see that everything is changed in one go. Now you can save your projects here within the macro editor with this simple Save As button, and note that the directory which is used is the one specified in your project preferences. So here, macro path, here you can specify the path that you would like to use for all of your macros. You can also associate your macros with a shortcut. So if I wanted to do something with this macro in particular, I can simply click on this shortcut button and it will add it here to shortcut Q7. Alternatively, you can also go to macro, define user shortcuts at any time, and then specify here which macro you would like to have associated with that shortcut. Now, it was easy for us to find the rename method by doing something on the GUI, but what other ways can we find the properties and the methods that we might want to use in a macro? So one easy way is that if I open up here the properties box for the spectrum, I get a list of all these various properties, and if you hold your mouse over these different property names, you will see a tooltip which shows you the actual name used in the program. So positive contour color or negative contour base, etc. An alternative is to look at the API documentation. So in our help menu, you can go to Show API Documentation. You can also find this on our website, and you can go here to Core Package, and that then has information about each of our main data items. So I could go to peak, for instance, and then it will give me information about here properties and methods that are associated with peaks. Another thing that I do a lot is to have a look directly on the console. If I'm interested, for instance, in what I can do with a spectrum, I could just type sp equals, so I'm just setting this variable to get, and now I'm going to copy PID to clipboard here. So I'm just taking one of my spectra and I'm going to paste that in there. And now if I type sp, that points to this object. Now if I type sp dot and then click on tab, I get a list of all the different properties and methods associated with a spectrum. Escape gets me out again, or if I type one letter and then press tab, then I get obviously just the subset starting with P. So that is often a quick and convenient way to find methods and properties that you might be looking for. Now you can obviously include in your macro any form of Python that you are otherwise familiar with, and what I'm going to show you now is in particular how you can add loops. So I might want to do something with a whole set of peaks. So let's just bring up our peak list here, and I'm going to change the figure of merit associated with all of these peaks. So the peak list I'm dealing with, I'm going to set PL equal to get, and then again I'm going to do copy BID to clipboard, paste it in, and now I can simply do for peak in pl.peaks, and then I say peak.figure of merit equal to 0. Now when I run this, you can see that all my figures of merit in this peak list are being set to 0. Another useful use of loops is to loop through currently selected items. So rather than doing something on everything in a peak list, I may just want to do it on a subset of peaks that are selected. Here, for instance. We can do this using a class called current. So I no longer need my peak list. Instead, I'm going to say for peak in current.peaks, and I'm going to set those to 0.5. And you can see now it's just taken the currently selected peaks and set the figure of merit for those. And you can easily find out what is contained in current by simply typing current dot and tab, and you can see that there are many different things contained in here. So current, integral, residue, NMR atom, all sorts of different things that you might be able to select, and then you can do things just on those. As I mentioned previously, you can add as much normal Python to your macro as you would like. What I've shown here is really very basic and perhaps not that useful on its own. But once you get onto changing assignments and making real use of the power of loops and conditionals, so if statements and that kind of thing, then you will be able to do some really nice things pretty easily. Our macro writing tutorial includes many exercises and example macros. To go through those, and also the CcpN macros contained within the program. They might give you ideas for things that you could do, and will also help you learn more about Python if you are a beginner. The tutorial also shows you some additional things, such as how you can easily add a pop-up message, how to add functions or subroutines, and how you can make your macro undoable so that Control or Command Z will undo your macro again after you've run it. And then finally, for more advanced Python programmers, there is information about using external libraries and a list of all the libraries that are included in the program. So obviously NumPy, SciPy, Matplotlib, Pandas, NMR Glue are all part of it, but there are many, many others as well. So we hope you have fun writing your macros, manage to do exciting things, perhaps save yourself some time and effort, and do also share your macros with others if you would like on our forum.